Once a month or so, we invite our resident couples counselor and sex therapist, Dr. David McKenzie, to join us in Studio 4 to talk about women and men who are in hetero or same-sex intimate relationships. This hour, fear of commitment is on his agenda. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. David McKenzie back to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Hi, Fanny.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, commitment. Someone told me once, I think it was a top psychologist in California or someplace like that, that commitment was actually freeing. If you could actually commit, it will free you up.
To some degree, commitment, of course, also involves limitations on what you can do. You're no longer just a free agent to go out and it depends on what the couple has negotiated in their relationship. Couples will come to me and they'll be in a common law relationship and say, oh, well, actually, we're single, we're not married yet. So there's a statistic that came out recently showing that women now are rising in terms of being single. I'd want to tease out that statistic. Statistics can lie and be deceiving. And I'd like to know what they mean by single. But a lot of couples will be in serial monogamous relationships, exclusive relationships. They'll end after 5 or 6 years, and then they'll go on to the next one. But they can say, never been married. So, yeah.
Get it. So it's more marriage they're saying no to than commitment,
no,
in a
no,
sense,
even,
no?
Well, yeah, I think that's more it. I think what's happening is seems to be, appears to be a rise on women being afraid of commitment as well. I just think women with more economic freedom are simply rising to the level where males are. Males have traditionally been rather hesitant, it seems, at commitment. And I think women, now that they have more economic freedom, are the same.
Sure. Well, someone said, Mo on Rock 101, who does all the Hollywood gossip, she said, mentioning marriage to George Clooney is like firing a starter pistol behind Secretariat. Like, he's a goner, so look out. And yet he seems to be in all these fab relationships and all of that, but he doesn't want to be in them for life, or maybe he does. Maybe you always hear things like, one day she'll get him, someone will get him. You know, and the whole get idea is kind of silly.
There is a minority of people, and I want to emphasize a small minority, who cannot be in long-term relationships. They either have an attachment disorder or a borderline personality disorder. What's so typical of that is someone who goes madly in love with somebody, you're the love of my life, and by 4 or 5 weeks they've already shut down on them, finding fault with them, and they leave the relationship. That is a disorder that is difficult to deal with. But I think we're talking about a much broader trend in our culture. We have to remember as well that we live in a throwaway culture. My wife, in fact, in Human Resources, has talked about young people coming in and they want to rise to the top without working out in the mailroom for a while. There's this sense in which they'll have 10 careers in their life, whereas in our generation, we maybe had at the most 2 or 3 careers. We may change jobs within those careers, but it's really, we're committed to 1 or 2 companies.
Well, we all have more freedom, but I'm suspecting if you have a really good relationship, freedom is part of it. Freedom within the relationship. I mean, you don't want to marry your father or your mother who tells you what to do. You want somebody who says, I'm a human and you're a human, we love each other madly, but you do whatever you want with a little compromise.
Oh, of course. You mentioned at the beginning of the interview the psychologist who said actually commitment frees you up. I wanted to come to the other side of that, and that is true. There is an element in which, oh, thank God, I don't have to cruise the bars anymore. I don't have to sleep with all these men that I don't want to sleep with in order to win them. So there is that kind of freedom. One of the interesting things is couples who meet each other in the teen or high school years and marry. By the time they've been in that relationship, 15 years or more, there is this common feeling in both genders of, oh my goodness, what's it like to be with another person? What's it like to have sex with another person? And if that is not navigated well, it can hurt a relationship severely.
And I'm doing a show tomorrow on why men lie.
Okay.
It's a novel.
Yeah.
So, but
women lie too.
I know, but throughout the novel there is this thing, this thread that runs through about why men lie, and it's excellent. It's Linda McIntyre. It's really good. But how about that? Two people come together, male or female, and say, I'm in your park. I'm with you for life. But they'll never marry you. Or they say they're with you for life. I'm committed to this relationship. I'm committed to you. And they bolt.
But don't forget, we're now in
a circumstance.
No, we're in a post-Christian age. in which having vows in public and so forth are not as important for Generation X and Y.
Sure.
I have a niece who's been in a long-term relationship for 30 years. They have 2 grown children. They've never had a formal marriage. And yet they're as married as any couple would be if they had a piece of paper.
And yet same-sex couples want to get married. And those of us who have been married say, don't need to.
But that, I think
Why do you want to do that?
But that's another issue. I think
of
that is a
course.
way of affirming same-sex relationships. It's one of the ways in which government and others can say
Right.
this couple is legitimate.
Sure.
Yeah.
And some people are committed more to the relationship than they are to each other. They might not even be that happy, but they decided from the get-go, till death do us part. And they're staying in the relationship no matter what, for the children, for the neighbors, maybe for themselves, for the money, whatever it is. But they are totally committed to the relationship.
I've seen a few of those,
The idea
not
of
many.
marriage, or to the marriage.
When I treat couples, I always say you need to see your marriage or your relationship as bigger than the 2 of you combined. And that everything you do has to be seen through the lens of, is this helpful for our relationship? It makes them a team and they come together. You mentioned in your introduction about how marriages are changing, that maybe to link up with somebody and have only one sex partner the rest of their lives is not in the mix for many couples. Marriage has changed, it's evolved. And so you'll have open marriages, you'll have couples who swing, you'll have couples who will have other friends who are same sex. They'll invite other people into their relationship.
Right.
A lot of our marriage is based on a Christianized notion of marriage. Secular marriage vows actually come out of the Book of Common Prayer, the Anglican Book of Common
Right.
Prayer. They just leave God out.
Exactly, and then there's many other religions
Sure.
where polygamy is the thing, many wives.
Well, I don't know. Mormonism did away with that about 80 years or
Yeah.
100 years ago. But yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is that marriage has evolved and changed. And if we look at marriage only through a Christianized or a lens or a religious lens, then that couple is linked into that religious tradition that says, no, it's exclusive, you must never play outside of it.
Right.
And that's fine. I celebrate
Sure,
that.
but they've taken out some of those vows, like love, honor, and obey.
Oh, well,
the
the-
obey part's
the
gone.
church took those
Thank
out, too.
goodness. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's good.
Interesting that Diana insisted on that word being in there when she married Charles.
Really?
Yeah,
She
she
did?
wanted to obey in there.
Obey?
Yeah.
Well, you know what happened to that.
Well,
It didn't work out all
It
that
didn't work
well.
out that great.
No,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of anxiety for many people around commitment. Does that have something to do with how we were raised, with our mothers, our fathers? If we were raised by a mom and dad who were married forever, madly in love?
I would say that has a small impact, and parents shouldn't be blaming themselves if their children don't get into long-term relationships. I think if you have a child, a daughter especially, it affects women more than men. 70% of borderline personality disorder affects women, only 30% for men.
Right.
If you have a child, for instance, that's in and out of relationships, cannot maintain long-term relationships, you might want to suggest they get some professional help for that. But the vast majority of the fear of commitment, I think, comes from a culture in which we don't want to be tied down. We don't want to be tied
Self-esteem?
down to one job.
Right. No, I get it.
Yeah.
Totally. Self-esteem have something to do with it? If you have high self-esteem, low self-esteem, good self-image, not so
only
good?
only as it's linked to females having more economic freedom and power. So that you'll find women in our day in which, like I say, if you're not married by 25, you're a spinster or an old maid, their status and their economic survivability depended on marriage. Now you've got women in careers, medical doctors, doing all sorts of things, going to university,
Sure.
getting their doctorates.
Adopting children.
Exactly. And so it's a much different world.
Well, and the labels are gone. I don't think a woman who doesn't marry today is considered an old maid.
Absolutely
or
not.
a spinster. And a man who is a bachelor has always been honored,
Exactly,
pretty much. I mean, they go,
exactly.
he's a bachelor.
I know,
Never
I
been
know,
married.
I
But
know.
then, but then my old aunties used to gossip. You know, he's never married. What do you think that is?
Yeah. I think, I'll be honest with you, some women have ended relationships and have come to see me for like a year and a half afterwards, once a month. I'll guide them through and they'll seek counsel on people they're dating. And if they come across a man who's 45 years of age and never been in a long-term relationship, never been committed in a relationship, I say you need to search that out more.
Right.
There's a reason why somebody by 45 has never been in a long-term relationship.
Or in any relationship.
Or in any
I mean,
relationship,
they've dated,
yeah.
but they've never been in a relationship.
Especially if they're still living with mother.
Well, you know, like the aunties, again, the old gossiping aunties would
Yeah.
say, I bet he's a homosexual.
Oh, no.
You know, but
Yeah.
but they did that
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
And
Well-
not necessarily so at all.
Yeah.
Do you think people are asexual?
There's 1%
You're
who are-
straight, you're gay,
Yeah.
or you're just in the middle
Yeah.
and don't really care.
Yes. Kinsey identified, 2% of the population that was asexual. And there's now a society or a group that actually identifies as asexual. You can find them online.
I'm not straight, I'm not gay.
That's
I
right.
just don't really want to have sex
That's right.
with anyone. I'm just happy.
They will have sex, but they're not driven by it.
But
They
not
don't need
driven by it
No,
at all.
No. Yeah.
And you know, there used to be a thought that if you have a ring on your finger, you'll live happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think, called the Cinderella complex or something like that. But
Well-
if I get married, if somebody wants to marry me,
Yeah.
that's a
That's-
big thing.
But also that starts to speak to low self-esteem. They'll put up with anybody just to belong. The sexual revolution of the 60s and early 70s really was the death knell to the Christian notion of marriage. And all the church laws on marriage were made in the Middle Ages when people only lived an average of 35 years of
True.
age. So if you had a bad marriage, you just had to say, well, hang on, heaven's around the
Right.
corner.
The mere idea you're going to be with the same person
For 60, 70
for
years,
60, 70, 80 years. Oh,
Yeah.
80 would be a lot.
be 100 years
Even
old.
60 years, you'd be 100 years old, crocking around. Oh, dear. David McKenzie, our guest, he is a couples counselor and a sex therapist.